You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all of you Foxborough faithful, and thank you once again for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage. And of course, your first listen each and every day. Remember, Locked On Patriots is available on all platforms, including YouTube. So smash that subscribe button, download, follow wherever you get your podcasts to ensure that you get the latest episode as soon as it's available. I'm your host, Mike Debate. I cover your New England Patriots for Patriots Country of Sports Illustrated. Reach out to me. Let me know what's on your mind on X at MDABATENFL. While you're out there showing some social media love to Locked On Patriots, please be sure to follow our account there as well at LO_Patriots. And of course, folks, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And Pats fans, it is that time of year. The New England Patriots' penultimate game of the 2023 season, whether you feel it's merciful or not, will take place this Sunday, New Year's Eve, Orchard Park, New York, Highmark Stadium, the New England Patriots visiting the Buffalo Bills. And if you tuned in yesterday here on Locked On Patriots, you know it was time to cross the streams with Locked On Bills host Joe Marino, my good friend and colleague. Luckily for us today, all of the Patriots and Bills walking wounded are covered right here on Locked On Patriots, because I'm welcoming in another good man, another good friend of mine, and a very valued contributor here to Locked On Patriots, as well as Locked On Bills. He is a doctor of physical therapy. He is the publisher of BangedUpBills.com, an overall expert when it comes to injuries in the AFC East. My good friend, Dr. Kyle Trimble, joins me here today. Kyle, thank you so much for coming to me in friendship today. Welcome back to Locked On Patriots.
Of course, Mike. Always glad to be on here.
And it's always our pleasure to have you on. Very few have the ability to give the insight that you can provide when it comes to both the Patriots and the Bills walking wounded. And folks, he also sprinkles in the Dolphins and the Jets. He does it all in the AFC East, so you're going to want to check out to see what he brings to the table each and every day at BangedUpBills.com. But you know, Kyle, we'll start with the news of the day when it comes to the New England Patriots, and that is Rhamondre Stevenson being placed on season-ending injured reserve. Obviously, he will not be among the Patriots making the trip to Orchard Park this weekend. Suffered the high ankle sprain while attempting to secure a first down in the first quarter of the Patriots' Week 13 loss to the LA Chargers. Now, Stevenson initially had an MRI, and that MRI revealed that his injury might have him back on the field within a couple of weeks, but he had not practiced prior to his being placed on injured reserve yesterday since incurring the injury on December 3rd. Now, in this type of an injury with a high ankle sprain, is it typical where these types of return times can fluctuate? And I think what really is on the minds of most Patriots fans is, what does this mean in the future for Rhamondre Stevenson and his playing time and his ability to return to the gridiron strongly in 2024?
Well, Mike, that's a lot of questions for Rhamondre, and obviously with him being one of the few bright spots on the offense, a lot of people are concerned, and rightfully so. So I'm going to go briefly back, talk about what happened when the injury occurred, and kind of talk about how we diagnose it, what you're looking at, timelines go along that mindset there. So, right, like you said, back on December 3rd, he suffered a high ankle sprain to the right side due to hip drop tackle against the Chargers in the first quarter. And he was able to leave and get assessed, and I don't believe he ever came back to the game. And then, of course, they come out later, say he has a high ankle sprain. He'll be out for several weeks there. At the time, you always look to try to give the guy a chance to rehab and see what they can do and see if they can kind of come back from that. These high ankle sprains could be anywhere from a week or two to 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. It depends on the position that they play, and of course the severity there too. So that plays a lot of part into that. Some ways they diagnose the high ankle sprains is obviously, like you mentioned before, through MRI. They're looking at any edema or soft tissue swelling in the affected area in between the tibia and fibula. And then, of course, the talus that makes up the ankle joint in the lower ankle foot area. So looking for that, looking at damage to the anterior posterior talofibular ligaments. And they're also just looking for any damage to the syndesmotic ligaments that kind of help keep the tibia and fibula together, because it's kind of bound at the bottom and then it articulates over the talus of the foot there, and it helps kind of create the ankle joint. So some ways we can diagnose it, not through MRI. The MRI is done secondary to once they have a good idea what's going on there. There's a few different tests they can do. That includes a hop test, which is as simple as it is. They hop on the ankle and see if that reproduces the pain. They can also do a squeeze test. And what happens is they have the patient lie flat. They work about halfway up the leg, and then they squeeze the tibia and fibula together up higher. So if they get a separation, that sensation of that pain lower in the ankle, then that's a higher suspicion for a high ankle sprain. Other things they can do is replicate the mechanism of injury. The mechanism of injury is dorsiflexion, which is where the foot comes up, and eversion, where the foot comes out. So what happens in the hip drop tackle, like we talked about, the foot got caught, pointed outward, and the foot was flexed upward, and then the foot was rotated out when the player fell on the outside part of the leg there. So that creates a high ankle sprain that separates the tibia and fibula, and that's where that syndesmotic ligament is damaged there. So they reproduce that by doing that exact motion. They'll get that same pain. And then finally, if they palpate the front of the ankle and they palpate the syndesmotic ligament and it's tender, that's usually a pretty good sign. So you can look at video and say, hey, that looks a high ankle sprain, and then they test it, and most likely it is. There are times where medial ankle sprains do look like that, but then they turn out to be high ankle sprains, which is unfortunate. And it's just really unfortunate because no amount of tape, no amount of rehab is going to speed these things up there. But like I said, sometimes positional demands can allow guys to come back quicker than others. With running back, they're digging their feet into the ground and driving forward. That's going to put a lot of stress through the ankle. So to try to come back and push through that makes it real difficult. And you see a lot of guys lose a lot of power, lateral mobility, and they just can't really ever get back up to speed within the season that the injury happens. So it wasn't surprising to see Rhamondre miss the past 3 games. That's pretty typical for running backs to miss, 2-3 games like this here.
Right.
What was surprising was the fact that he was placed on injury reserve. Now, that might have been due to the Patriots out of it. He has nothing to play for. Let's get you right, and let's use your roster spot for somebody else, so they want to see how they develop there. So I don't believe his injury reserve status was indicative of the severity of the ankle sprain, but more or less a roster management decision. And then finally, with the final part of the question, will this affect him for next year? As long as he gives the rest and rehab he needs to, it shouldn't. I know guys do have a high history of high ankle sprains. You might see some residual laxity in there, but it shouldn't be a thing where you have it once and it's going to continue to have it again and again. It just, that thing needs to heal up in there and give it the time to just really get back to normal. If it doesn't, and there's residual laxity or he's still having problems, they can do a tightrope procedure, which we've seen, plenty of Alabama players do. We saw Kenny Pickett, the Steelers, do it earlier this year. Like, they have different options to help this thing make sure it happens and heals properly. It's just a matter of if there's residual chronic issues, but I don't anticipate this being a problem down the line in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, that's definitely good news for the New England Patriots and great news for their fans who really enjoy watching Rhamondre run the football, like you said earlier. I'm glad you mentioned the hip drop tackle because it's become somewhat of a controversial play or a controversial defensive move in the NFL. Folks, for those of you that are unfamiliar with what a hip drop tackle might be, the defensive player is going to approach his target from either the side or behind, mostly from behind, but it could be from the side as well. They wrap their arms around that player and almost essentially become dead weight to drop into the ground. And in a lot of cases, they'll land directly on the offensive player's legs. And Kyle, I thought you described that very well in terms of what happened to Rhamondre when he left in the first quarter of the game against the Chargers. According to NFL executives, we've heard several come out and say that this type of tackle can pose up to a 25-time higher risk of injury than a normal tackle. If the NFL decided that they were going to eliminate this, Is there any reason to believe that high ankle sprains could be reduced as a result, or is this just something that players, especially running backs and wide receivers and maybe even quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks, might be prone to no matter what?
They're going to be prone to it no matter what. I
Mhm.
know that there's a controversy with hip drop tackle being that it's a dangerous play. I know a lot of players come out and said, hey, how do you want us to take down these guys? You can't hit them high. You can't hit them
Mhm.
low. These guys will just try to hang on every which way to take these guys down. So I do see the safety risk of the hip drop tackle. I don't know that you want to eliminate it, but there is concern. You do see injuries. We saw Lamarcus Andrews earlier this year, but we see plenty of high ankle sprains as a result of guys just being in the piles, getting rolled up on. Like, it's not going to get rid of the high ankle sprains. You might see some of the more traumatic high ankle sprains or even fibular fractures and whatnot reduced as a result of eliminating the hip drop tackle. But there has to be a fine line between either you get rid of it or you try to police it. Just eventually at some point, you're not going to be able to take these guys down because you're not going to hit them any which way.
Right. Yeah, very good point. I mean, it's one thing to want to eliminate injury and do everything that you can to prevent it, but in a contact sport like football, and really, I think any contact sport, folks, there comes the risk with no matter what you do on the field, no matter how these guys are taught to tackle, there's always going to be the risk of injury. And thank you for enlightening us on not only the history of these types of injuries, the typical recovery time, but also specifically to Rhamondre, because I know Patriots fans would have loved to see this matchup, especially this late in the season. Rhamondre was starting to come into his own and really become the Rhamondre of old. Finishes the season with 619 yards, 4 touchdowns, averaging 4 yards per attempt, but he was starting to be able to break the tackles again and really show that physical, aggressive running style. And with the Buffalo Bills allowing a shade over 111 yards per game and 4.6 yards per carry, yeah, the jobs of the New England Patriots runners would have been made that much easier if Rhamondre Stevenson were in the lineup this weekend. So ultimately, folks, we got to wait until 2024 to see Rhamondre look fantastic, as my good friend Murph would say, but he will be back on the field. But two Patriots players in particular may not be on the field, and they are on the injury report right now. Jabrill Peppers with a hamstring injury and Hunter Henry with a knee injury. We're going to talk about those injuries with Dr. Kyle Trimble in just a moment when this episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast continues, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On listeners, we've all been there. You want tickets to the big game or your favorite musical artist, and you just can't find an easy and affordable way to do it? Well, you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and the easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater and events near you. And Gametime's all-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without any hidden fees. They're actually obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. And that includes zone deals, where you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Patriots fans, thank you once again for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage. And today we are talking all things New England Patriots and Buffalo Bills walking wounded as we head into this Week 17 matchup in Western New York. New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills set for a 1 p.m. kickoff on New Year's Eve from Highmark Stadium. Joining me today, Dr. Kyle Trimble. Kyle, earlier on we talked about Rhamondre Stevenson and the injury to the New England Patriots star running back. It definitely hurt this team to have Rhamondre out, and it will hurt this team to have Rhamondre out against the Buffalo Bills. That often means that players have to step up and they have to take on the mantra and take on extra responsibility. Well, one of the guys that would normally take on extra offensive responsibility with someone like a Rhamondre Stevenson out would be Hunter Henry, team captain this year. one of the more durable New England Patriots, coming from someone who covered Henry since he was back with the Chargers. Durability and Hunter Henry didn't often go in the same sentence, but since he came to New England, he's only missed one game, and that one game was last week's win against the Denver Broncos. So I know and Patriots fans are well familiar with Hunter Henry suffering a knee injury at the start of the fourth quarter against the Kansas City Chiefs. He had 7 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown in that game, and he did not return to the game. We've seen him in dribs and drabs on the practice field, Kyle, but judging from what I've seen, it doesn't look like he's been a participant in many of these. Very, very limited. Judging from what you've seen from his knee injury and what you've heard from some of the reports coming out, is it realistic to expect Hunter to possibly suit up for this game on Sunday?
Watching the video, I have it pulled up on my desktop right now. It looks like an MCL sprain, and it's because the safety or cornerback hit him low while he's trying to catch the ball out to the right. That's why he missed last week, because it looked like a thigh contusion at first, but then the way that the safety cornerback hit, that it hit the outside part of his knee, which then affects the inside part of the knee, which is the MCL sprain. And they take a few weeks to kind of get back. And with how the team is, doing in terms of wins, losses, you got to wonder if he says, hey, is it worth me to get back out there? I understand the Patriots can play upset to the Bills, and I'm sure he wants to be back out there as a competitor, but is he going to be able to cut? Is he going to be able to block, anchor, everything he needs to do as a tight end because they're so versatile? Can he get back out there and play? And he's been limited this week from what I've seen. Of course, we see with every Patriots injury report, everybody's limited, everybody's questionable. It's really hard to read. I was mildly surprised he didn't play last week, because usually these guys are playing through. And he's coming off some really productive games. I believe the past 2 games was most productive of the season. So it might just come down to can he feel he can go? The fact it looks like an MCL sprain, he missed last week, leads me to believe he won't play in addition to the wins-loss record. But I could see him trying to go just because pride and, wanting to beat the Bills.
Great information, Kyle. And the one thing I always remember about covering Hunter when he was a Los Angeles Charger, and even into this while he is a New England Patriot, is he's a warrior. He wants to get back out on the field. This is a guy that really thrives on competition. And you know as well as I that sometimes athletes can be a little bit too headstrong for their own good. If, in fact, he pushes and believes that he wants to get back out on the field and wants to help Bailey Zappi and try to see if he can beat the Buffalo Bills this weekend, is there any way that he can do further damage, potentially even damage that could keep him from his 2024 preparations? It's
possible. I mean, with the MCL sprain, that's a well-healing ligament that usually does not require surgery. It just requires several weeks off there. If he does try to play, he would wear a hinged knee brace to limit that varus valgus stress that we place through the knee. He could hypothetically cause more damage with the already unstable knee in there. You worry about ACL tear, which I know is in his history. You worry about PCL. You worry about all the other injuries in there. The hinged knee brace would help cut back on some of the hyperextension or that varus valgus stress that would stress the MCL further, or even the LCL. And then even to a lesser extent would reduce the ACL and PCL. So it does help, but doesn't eliminate the possibility altogether. And of course, there's other injuries too, because if you create more stability at the knee, then you're putting a little more stress on the ankle or the hip there. So it might just come down to, does he limit his route tree? Does he limit his snaps? Are there ways for him to get out there? Does he become more just a blocking tight end, just work more north-south rather than east-west? It might just come down to what he can do out there, and if he can still be effective more so than the next guy up. So there's a chance he could cause further damage, but the team's not going to put him in unnecessary risk and risk him for 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. Without question. And I mean, you look at guys like Mike Gesicki, Pharaoh Brown that are on this roster right now. You have to believe that they're going to be able to carry the load just like they did against the Denver Broncos. Patriots probably going to have to get a little more inventive on the offensive side of the ball, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail in that. Hunter is not the only high-profile injury right now on this team, Kyle. Jabrill Peppers missed his 5th straight practice for the New England Patriots today with a hamstring injury. He missed his first game of 2023 last Sunday night against Denver. His continued absence continues to put his status for this weekend in doubt. Now, Jabrill has been one of the Patriots' top defenders this year, one of their more physical guys in that defensive backfield. and knowing the way the Patriots are looking to approach this Bills offense, what can you tell us about what you've learned about Jabrill's injury, and how much of a lingering problem could this be for him?
It could linger for a while. It's unfortunate he missed last week. It was really interesting about Jabrill's injury was there wasn't anything from my side of the beat reporters that came out during the Kansas City Chiefs game. He played in 91% of the snaps against the Chiefs, which is pretty much a full game. It comes out of the hamstring, and then he hasn't played last week, which I was surprised because usually if you see it in report injury, then okay, maybe it's significant enough you're going to miss that. But then if you're playing most of the game, unless he injured at the very end, which once again, I didn't see that. I'll be honest, I don't review every single Patriots, game. I don't look at every Dolphins game. There's simply not enough time. So it's possibly could have injured at the end of the game, but it's really surprising he missed. He does have a history going back the past few years. I don't have a complete history, but I know this goes back at least to 2021, potentially 2020, where there's a bit of hamstring injury. It's kept him out for a little bit of time. Now, it's not a death sentence that he misses some time. Plenty of players have hamstring injury histories. It's just how you manage them. Do you continue to try to play through that, let it get worse, or you try to give it yourself the chance to rest up and recover there? And with his position being safety, he's going to need a lot more of that wide range, east-west, north-south to really just patrol the second half of the field. And he needs to make sure that he can get to where he needs to be at on a moment's notice there. So just not having the ability to push off the affected side might prevent him from really getting out there, of course, backpedaling. So he hasn't practiced it all week at all this week, and it's Thursday night as we're talking. So I'm leaning toward him not playing. Once again, lost season. It's just unfortunate because this seemed like this continues to linger. So he's going to need a good rehab recovery in the offseason and really work on eccentric strengthening to give the hamstring the best chance it has to not re-injure itself. But sometimes the best laid plans, things still fall apart. So you hope that he just takes care of himself and just focuses on getting rehab so he can be ready for next season, potentially every game.
Yeah, without question. And look, bottom line, folks, when you look at what the Patriots are playing for as opposed to what their potential might be for next season, Jabrill is going to be a key member of that secondary for a number of years to come. The Patriots are very high on him. If Bill Belichick is still the coach here next year, you can bet Jabrill's going to be a big part of that defense. He is very high on his abilities, and you want to make sure that he's good for long term. So I agree with you. I don't expect him to suit up in this game. Him missing the 2 practices this week, I think almost confirms that. We'll get final confirmation later today, folks, when the final injury report comes out. Kyle, thank you for your insight on the New England Patriots. It's been a plethora of walking wounded all season long, whether you're talking Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon, right to the players we've talked about today, and Rhamondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry and Jabrill Peppers. But the New England Patriots do have an opponent this weekend as well, and there are some walking wounded on the Bills. Kyle's going to give us his insight on the team he covers day in and day out. So don't go anywhere, folks. This episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast will continue right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On listeners, football season is here, and there is no better time to use PrizePicks, the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. In fact, they're the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of those other players, including the pros and the sharks out there, you pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player stat projection and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. And listen up, folks, you are going to love this. With the PrizePicks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. And that's for football games and for basketball games. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. And PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. And if you're a Patriots fan and you're looking at that injured reserve list in New England, you know all about the need for injury insurance. So don't delay, do it today. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match up to $100 by going to prizepicks.com FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Locked On listeners, thank you once again for joining us here today on Locked On Patriots. It is a Patriots Bills injury report, and we have the good fortune of being joined today by Dr. Kyle Trimble, doctor of physical therapy, the publisher of BangedUpBills.com, and an overall expert on all injuries with regard to the AFC East. And Kyle, I want to thank you for giving us your insight on injuries to Rhamondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry and Jabrill Peppers. Definitely injuries that are of concern and of high concern to New England Patriots fans. But, you know, I'm a Godfather fan. You know, I love to say keep your friends close and your enemies closer. We are about to do that here on Locked On Patriots. The Buffalo Bills right now have a number of players, limited full participants. They had the good fortune of only having one player miss practice on Thursday. That was Shaq Lawson. It's the time of year. It's an illness. We don't know what the extent of which that's going to extend to, but there are a few Bills that are popping up on the report for various reasons. We've seen Micah Hyde with a neck stinger. We've seen AJ Epineza with a rib injury. Daquan Jones with a pectoral injury. Leonard Floyd has had both wrist and rib injuries listed. When you look at the Buffalo Bills, this is a team you cover day in and day out. What should Patriots fans be watching for when this team takes the field on Sunday?
I'll tell you right now, the Bills report looks worse than it really is, but I'm looking at it on my computer right now, and we're going to just kind of work down from the top there. So Terrell Bernard is one player you're going to want to watch out for. He suffered what appeared to be a medial ankle sprain, I believe sometime in the second quarter. He was just trying to turn up the field and tweaked his ankle there. So I always grow concerned that when it looks like a medial ankle sprain, it could be a high ankle sprain like we talked about earlier, but the fact that he's been limited all week and he was able to continue back and play on it, it's just more of a medial ankle sprain. He should be able to play through that, but he might be a little bit limited at times, but he's still a human missile. But he's one to watch out for come Sunday. AJ Epinesa is another one you want to watch out for. He's had a career year so far, especially in a contract year. He suffered a left rib injury against the Chiefs, and what happened was he got the interception off of Patrick Mahomes. He got tackled, and a huge offensive lineman fall on him, and he had told the press that the ball was wedged between his ribs and when the offensive lineman fell on him. And the fact that he's missed the past 2 weeks and he has been able to practice suggested more a rib cartilage injury, which are slower to heal, than a rib fracture, which they can just inject the nerve and then they can numb it up there. So he looks like being on track to play, but he still might be limited and could have an early exit if he re-aggravates that area. Some other injuries to note, you mentioned Leonard Floyd. He did suffer a left rib injury. He got blasted. He came right back out and then continued playing. So it's just more of a bruised rib situation, but he's been a terror off the edge all this season. Damar Hamlin, I don't see him playing just because it looked like he suffered a labrum injury. He got hit really hard on special teams. And the fact that Micah Hyde is looking to come back this week after having a neck stinger kind of puts Hamlin on the back burner, which is fine. He's been primarily a special teams player this year. What's going on with Micah Hyde is that he had his neck fusion last year, missed all of last year except for 2 games at the beginning. And then he came back, and then he's been having 3 stingers in the past 6 or 7 weeks now. And what happens when you have the stinger is the symptom of the underlying issue there. So whether it's another herniated disc, there's some type of stenosis in there, there's some type of irritation in the brachial plexus, somewhere in the neck. Every time he gets hit, it just kind of restarts that inflammation process, and he has to give it time to rest and recover. So he's had a long history of neck injuries. I anticipate him playing just because this could be a home game. You know, they want to get back out there, and he's been 2 weeks, and he's a far better player than Damar Hamlin. So there's definitely some of the big ones, and then other guys you want to watch out for. Ty Johnson, he had AC joint sprain. If he doesn't go, Leonard Fournette will probably be called up again because they're running out of opportunities to play him until they get to the playoffs. And then the other guy you want to watch out for is Daquan Jones. He suffered a right pectoral injury back in week 5 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He tore the pectoral, had it repaired, and he's approaching the 3-month mark, which will be this Sunday, Monday, in that range there. So he's been practicing in full all week, which is a very pleasant surprise. It just might come down to if you need to activate him and start getting him some reps against the Patriots, or do you wait till next week and get him against Miami? So he'll be one to watch. They did release Jermaine Efedi on Thursday, which opens up a roster spot, but they also can bring Justin Shorter back, who's going to be closing his practice window here soon. So there's a lot of moving pieces with that stuff, but watch for Daquan Jones potentially being activated, and then watch for Terrell Bernard, Epinesa, and then Micah Hyde will be ones to see whether they play. But the only one I'm really concerned about moving forward is DeMar Hamlin, which might be a non-factor if Hyde comes back.
The Bills are in a much different position right now. The Patriots are not necessarily playing for anything, like I said, other than draft position, but the Bills really need this game if they want to get to next week against the Dolphins and have that game potentially end up being for the AFC East crown. So how the Bills will deploy their players on Sunday, folks, is going to be a lot different than what we see in New England and what we see from the New England Patriots. That could be a factor as well, but excellent information. Kyle, what can I say? I thank you so much for lending your wisdom, your counsel, the way only you can. I do appreciate all of your contributions and for being a great friend, an ally to Locked On Patriots, even though we are on different sides of the street on this one. Before I let you go, please let everyone know where they can reach out to you, interact with you, and the type of coverage they can expect from you through this week, the following week, and into the playoffs from the great voice, the great desk, and the great pen of Dr. Kyle Trimble.
You can find all my work at bangedupbills.com. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter or X, Facebook, Reddit. I post up on the Reddit subreddit all the time. You can find me anywhere. Feel free to ask questions. I'll try to provide the best amount of information possible. And hopefully it's a good game for both sides this coming weekend.
Absolutely. Hopefully a good game and hopefully a healthy game for both sides. Thank you all for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage. Don't forget, we're not done here on Locked On Patriots yet. We end the week in style as Murph joins me tomorrow. Break down the monster keys to victory, folks. What do the Patriots need to do to pull off the upset in Orchard Park? Can they do it? Murph and I will answer that question this weekend. But in the meantime, I once again thank Dr. Kyle Trimble for all of his contributions, his wisdom, and his counsel today. But I thank all of you for taking time out of your schedule to join us here on Locked On Patriots. On behalf of Dr. Kyle Trimble, I am Mike Debate, reminding you to stay safe and to stay well and to be the change you wish to see in the world. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow on Locked On Patriots.